Seoul, Yongsan-gu. A private penthouse overlooking nothing romantic. Just the gray sprawl of low-rise rooftops and a neon PSY sign flickering its last. The most unsettling thing about Kang Dae-sung's apartment was not the security lasers or the soundproof walls. It was the silence. For 3 years, Serafina Nkosi had lived inside that silence. She wasn't a prisoner. That would have been simpler. She was a guarantee. Her former employer, a smooth-talking promoter from Itaewon, had borrowed 300 million Korean wons from Dae-sung's faction and then vanished to Vietnam. As collateral, Sarah had been handed over. Not chained. Not locked in a basement. Just kept. Kept in a spare bedroom on the 31st floor. Kept with a monthly stipend, a gym pass, and a single rule. You do not leave without an escort. For 1,095 days, she had watched Dae-sung ignore her. He walked past her in the hallway like she was a piece of modernist furniture. Interesting shape, but not his. He'd nod once at breakfast if they crossed paths in the kitchen. Him with black coffee, her with ginger tea. He'd ask, "Sleep well?" and not wait for an answer. He never touched her. Not a brush of fingers. Not a glance that lingered. That was the unsettling part. Because Sarah knew men. In Chicago, she'd learned to read the hunger in their eyes by age 16. In Barbados with Grandma Nkosi, she'd watched fishermen undress women with their stares. Men were predictable. They wanted. They reached. They took. Dae-sung never did. He looked through her. Like she was a window into a room he had no interest in entering. Until the night of the first autumn rain. It was a Thursday. Sarah couldn't sleep. The rain hit the floor-to-ceiling windows and sheets, turning the city into a watercolor smear of neon and shadow. She'd been restless for weeks, that familiar itch under her skin that only movement could scratch. She padded into the main living area in an oversized cotton shirt, faded navy, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and bare feet. The apartment was empty. Dae-sung was at a meeting. His security team, a quiet woman named Officer Choi and a hulking man called Bear, were stationed in the hallway, as usual. Sarah had 3 hours of borrowed time. She pulled up a playlist on her phone. Not K-pop, not hip-hop, a deep-cut mix of Bajan folk drumming fused with Chicago footwork, tracks her grandmother used to play when cleaning the house on Sundays. The beat dropped. A stuttering kick drum, shack-shack shakers, a low bass line that hummed in her sternum. Sarah closed her eyes and danced. Not for anyone. Not for a camera. For herself. For the ghost of her grandmother's hands clapping in a yellow kitchen. For the streets of Hyde Park where she'd learned to isolate her ribcage from her hips. Her body remembered what Seoul had tried to make it forget. She moved like water finding its level. Her arms traced slow circles, then fractured into sharp angles. Her hips rolled in figure eights. Her feet slid across the cold marble floor, bare soles slapping in rhythm. The micro-braids at her nape swayed. Her gray-green eyes remained half-closed, lost in the pulse. She didn't hear the elevator chime. She didn't see the shadow fill the doorway. Kang Dae-sung had returned early because the meeting had bored him. He'd dismissed his driver in the underground garage and taken the private lift. The moment the doors opened on his floor, he heard it. A sound that did not belong in his silent kingdom. Not music. Something older. Drums that spoke a language his bones understood but his brain refused to translate. Then he saw her. Sarah was dancing in the middle of his living room, rain streaming behind her like a living curtain, and she was not the woman he'd ignored for 3 years. She was a stranger. Her body was a sentence he couldn't finish. The way her spine curved like a bow being drawn. The way her head tilted back, exposing the long column of her throat. The small scar near her collarbone. A childhood fall from a mango tree, she'd once told Officer Choi. Her face, usually polite and guarded, was open, vulnerable, alive. Dae-sung's left hand, the one with the burn scar, pressed against the doorframe. His knuckles went white. For 3 years, he had told himself a story. She is a liability, a transaction, a problem to be solved when the debt is paid. He had built walls around her so high that he'd convinced himself he felt nothing. No attraction, no curiosity, no dangerous, humming want. Those walls crumbled in 7 seconds. Sarah spun on her heel and froze. Her eyes snapped open. Gray-green, wide, pupils blown from the rhythm. She saw him, saw the way his chest rose too fast, saw the dark flush creeping up his neck, saw his right hand curl into a fist at his side, as if he was physically restraining himself from crossing the room. The music kept playing. A woman's voice sang in Bajan Creole, "Don't watch me if you can't hold me." Neither of them breathed. "I didn't hear you," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, but her pulse hammered in her throat. Dae-sung didn't answer. He walked toward her. Not fast, not slow. Each step deliberate, the way he moved when he was about to break a man's arm in 3 places. His custom Oxfords clicked on the marble. His charcoal suit was damp from the rain. His hair, black, cut short at the sides, longer on top, stuck to his forehead. He stopped 2 feet away, close enough that Sarah could smell him. Cedar, gunpowder residue, rain. "Dance again," he said. Not a request. Sarah's chin lifted. "No." His eyes, dark brown, almost black, traveled down her body and back up. Not leering, measuring, like he was committing every line and shadow to memory. 3 years, he said quietly. "You've been in my house for 3 years. You've eaten my food, used my shower, sat on my balcony reading books about plants and crying at dramas I could hear through the walls. And I have never once—" He stopped, swallowed. "I have never once wanted to touch you." Sarah's heart stuttered. "Then why are you looking at me like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're trying to figure out if I'd break." The rain intensified. The drums on her phone faded into the next track. A slower one, a Bajan lament about a sailor lost at sea. Dae-sung reached out, not to grab her. His fingers hovered an inch from her wrist, where her pulse jumped visibly under her umber skin. He didn't close the distance. "I run a criminal organization," he said. "I have done things that would make you vomit if I described them. I have a scar from a knife fight in Busan that runs from my hip to my ribs. I have not slept through the night in 11 years because I see faces when I close my eyes." He lowered his hand. "And none of that scares me as much as the fact that I cannot stop thinking about the way you just moved your shoulders." Sarah's breath caught, because she believed him. This was not a line. This was not seduction. This was a man confessing to a crime he hadn't committed yet. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Dae-sung's jaw tightened. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he stepped back. One full step, creating space she hadn't realized she didn't want. "Go to your room," he said. "Dae-sung, go." She went. But when she closed her bedroom door and leaned against it, her heart slamming, she heard something on the other side. A soft sound, almost inaudible. Kang Dae-sung was laughing. Not a happy laugh. A broken one. The laugh of a man who had just realized he'd spent 3 years building a cage for a bird he now desperately wanted to keep. Not to trap, but to watch fly. He pressed his palm flat against the wood of her door. "Serafina," he said, her name strange and beautiful in his mouth. "You have no idea what you've done." She slid down to the floor, her back against the door, and pressed her hand to the same spot. "Show me," she said. And the silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of everything unsaid. The next morning, Officer Choi noticed 2 things. First, Dae-sung had slept in the armchair facing Sarah's bedroom door. Not in his bed. Not on the couch. The armchair, which he'd dragged from the study, positioned so that the only way to reach Sarah's door was through him. Second, Sarah came out at 7:14 a.m. wearing a burnt orange knit dress, long-sleeved, high-necked, falling to her midcalf. Her micro-braids were loose, cascading past her shoulders. No makeup. Her lips were full and bare. Her gray-green eyes had dark circles beneath them. She looked at the armchair, looked at Dae-sung, still in yesterday's suit, his tie loosened, his shirt collar unbuttoned to reveal the top of a chest tattoo, the edge of a tiger's eye. Neither spoke. Officer Choi wisely retreated to the kitchen. Dae-sung rose. He moved stiffly. His left shoulder was tight, an old injury acting up. He walked to the kitchen island where a pot of coffee waited. He poured 2 cups, black for him, ginger tea for her. He placed her cup at her usual seat. Sarah didn't sit. "You watched me sleep," she said. "I watched your door." "Same thing." "No," he said, turning to face her. If I had watched you sleep, I would have opened the door. I did not. The air between them crackled. Sarah remembered his hand hovering over her wrist, an inch of possibility. She remembered his laugh, that hollow, terrified sound. Why are you different now? She asked. 3 years. You ignored me. You were polite. You were nothing. And last night, you looked at me like what? Like you wanted to eat me alive. Dae-sung set down his coffee cup. The ceramic clinked against the marble. He walked around the island, slowly, giving her time to move away. She didn't. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I told myself you were a possession, he said quietly. A piece of paper. A debt to be collected. That was the only way I could survive having you here. Because if I admitted the truth, if I let myself see you as a woman, as this woman, with your rare eyes and your ridiculous books about ferns and the way you hum off-key when you cook, he broke off. What is the truth? Sarah whispered. Dae-sung's burn-scarred hand rose. This time he didn't hover. His fingers touched her jaw, just the barest contact, the tips against her cheekbone. Her skin was warm, soft, nothing like he'd imagined. The truth, he said, is that I am a monster who wants to keep you. Not because you're collateral, not because you're useful, because when you dance, you look like freedom. And I have never been free a single day in my life. Sarah's breath trembled out. She should step back. She should remind him of the power imbalance, the fact that she was technically still a prisoner, the fact that he had literal blood on his hands. Instead, she leaned into his touch. What happens now? She asked. His thumb traced her cheekbone once, twice. Now I make a choice. I can send you away. Pay off your former employer's debt myself. Put you on a plane to Chicago. Never see you again. And the other choice? Dae-sung's eyes went dark. I keep you, but not as a prisoner. As something I have never had and do not deserve. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she thought he must feel it through the air. What would that make us? He smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was sharp, edged with hunger and warning. Dangerous, he said. The next week was a slow unraveling. Dae-sung did not touch her again. Not once. But everything else changed. He started eating breakfast with her instead of in his study. He asked questions, real ones. About Chicago. About her grandmother's house in Barbados, the one with the turquoise shutters and the breadfruit tree in the back. About why she'd come to Korea. A boy, she admitted. A mistake. The boy left. She stayed for the food and the chaos. He learned that she hated cilantro with a violent passion. That she could name every plant in the hanging gardens of Babylon. That she'd once been engaged. A jazz musician from New Orleans, but called it off 3 days before the wedding because she dreamed she was drowning and woke up relieved. She learned things about him, too. He didn't sleep. Ever. He survived on 4 hours of restless dozing, usually in a chair. His mother had died when he was 12. Not murdered, as she'd assumed, but of a stroke, and he'd been the one to find her body in the garden. His father was alive but hadn't spoken to him in 8 years. The scar on his arm was from a fire in a warehouse, a rival faction's arson attempt. He'd saved 3 men before the ceiling collapsed. You're not a monster, Sarah said one night. They were on the balcony, wrapped in blankets against the October chill. She was drinking ginger tea, he had whiskey. I am, he said calmly. I just haven't shown you the parts that would make you run. Try me. He looked at her for a long time. Then he told her about the man in Busan, the knife fight she'd mentioned. The story was ugly. A debt collector who'd threatened Dae-sung's youngest lieutenant. Dae-sung had broken the man's jaw, his left kneecap, and both hands. Then he'd made him crawl to the hospital. Sarah's face didn't change. Was he going to kill your lieutenant? She asked. Yes. Then you did what you had to do. Dae-sung's whiskey glass paused halfway to his lips. You're not supposed to understand. I'm from Chicago, she said simply. I've seen worse on the evening news. Something cracked in his chest. Something that had been frozen since his mother's body in the hydrangeas. That night, after she went to bed, he stood outside her door again. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. But he pressed his forehead to the wood and stayed there for 20 minutes, breathing the same air. Sarah, on the other side, did the same. 3 weeks later, the balance broke. Dae-sung came home at 2 a.m. with blood on his cuff. Not his. A rival faction had tried to move into his gambling territory, a group of young Russians with more ambition than sense. He'd handled it, but the adrenaline was still singing in his veins, and his hands were shaking, and all he could think about was her. He found Sarah in the living room. She was wearing a silk robe the color of dried blood, deep burgundy, belted at her waist, slipping off one shoulder. Her microbraids were wet. She'd just showered. The scent of her soap, jasmine and something earthy, like rain on hot pavement, hit him like a physical blow. She was reading, paperback with a torn cover. She looked up when he entered, saw the blood, didn't flinch. "Whose?" she asked. "Doesn't matter." She set the book down. Rose walked toward him. Her bare feet made no sound on the marble. "You're shaking," she said. "I know." She stopped in front of him, reached out. Her fingers touched his blood-stained cuff. Not the skin, just the fabric. "Let me help you," she said. Dae-sung's control snapped. He grabbed her waist. Not hard but firm. His burn-scarred hand spanning the curve of her hip, and pulled her against him. She gasped. His other hand cupped the back of her neck, tangling in the damp ends of her braids. "I have wanted to do this for 3 years, he said, his voice ragged. "Every single day. Every time you laughed. Every time you walked past me in that hallway. Every time you fell asleep on the couch, and I had to cover you with a blanket, because you looked so fucking peaceful I couldn't bear to wake you." Sarah's hands came up to his chest. Not pushing, pressing, feeling the thundering of his heart. "So why didn't you?" she breathed. "Because I knew," he said, "that once I started, I would never stop." He kissed her. It was not gentle. It was not the careful, measured kiss of a man in control. It was desperate, hungry, 3 years of silence exploding into contact. His mouth slanted over hers, and she opened for him immediately, a soft, broken sound escaping her throat. He tasted like whiskey and copper. She tasted like ginger and warmth. His hands mapped her back, her ribs, the dip of her waist. She pulled his shirt from his trousers, slid her palms up his stomach, felt the ridges of scar tissue and muscle. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead pressed to hers. "Serafina," he said, her name a prayer and a warning. "If we do this, there is no going back. You will be mine, and mine is a dangerous place to be." She looked into his dark eyes, saw the monster, yes, but also the boy who'd found his mother in the garden, the man who'd pulled 3 people from a fire, the creature who'd never been loved without conditions. "I've been in danger since I walked into your house," she said. "At least now I get to choose." He kissed her again, slower this time. "Promise." And in the penthouse above Seoul, with the neon flickering and the rain beginning to fall, Kang Dae-sung finally stopped being silent. 2 months later, someone tried to kill her. It happened on a Tuesday. Sarah had been granted limited freedom, Dae-sung's doing. She could now leave the penthouse with a single escort instead of a team. She'd started teaching movement therapy at a small studio in Hongdae, using a fake name. It was the first taste of independence she'd had since arriving in Korea. The attack came as she walked back from a cafe, a paper cup of ginger tea in her hand. 3 men, Korean, mid-30s, cheap suits. They blocked the alley she used as a shortcut. The leader smiled, a yellow-toothed grin that made her stomach drop. "Miss Nkosi," he said, "your boyfriend owes our boss an apology. And a lot of money." Sarah didn't run. Her grandmother had taught her, fear makes you a target. Anger makes you a problem. "I don't have a boyfriend," she said. "I have a captor who feeds me breakfast." "There's a difference." The men laughed. Then the leader reached for her arm. He never touched her. Officer Choi appeared from nowhere, a blur of dark clothes and efficient violence. She broke the leader's wrist in 2 places, swept the second man's legs, and drove her knee into the 3rd solar plexus. In 4 seconds, all 3 were on the ground. Choi grabbed Sarah's arm. "We're leaving. Now." Back at the penthouse, Dae-sung was not calm. He was quiet. That was worse. He stood by the window, his back to the room, his shoulders rigid. Officer Choi gave her report in rapid Korean. Sarah caught only fragments: Russian faction, retaliation. They knew her schedule. When Choi left, the silence stretched. Dae-sung. He turned. His face was a mask. No, it was worse than a mask. It was empty. The emptiness of a man who had already decided what he was going to do. You're leaving, he said. Sarah's heart stopped. What? Tomorrow. I'm sending you to Chicago. I've arranged a new identity, an apartment, a stipend. You'll never have to see me again. She stared at him. Then she laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. You don't get to do that. I do. I'm the one who put you in danger. They knew about you because of me. My enemies. My war. I knew the risks when I kissed you. You didn't know they'd try to grab you off the street. You didn't know they'd... His voice cracked. He looked away, his jaw working. When Choi called me, I was in a meeting. I had a gun in my hand. I almost shot the man I was negotiating with because I was so terrified that I'd lost you. Sarah crossed the room. She grabbed his face, both hands on his cheeks, forcing him to look at her. I am not a vase, she said fiercely. I am not a painting to be locked in a vault. I am a woman from Chicago who survived the South Side, a broken engagement, and 3 years of being invisible in a mafia boss's penthouse. I am not going to break because some idiots in cheap suits tried to scare me. His hands covered hers. His eyes were wet, not crying but close. I can't lose you, he whispered. I've lost everyone. My mother, my father's respect. Every person I've ever loved has either died or left. And you're the only good thing, the only warm thing. If something happened to you because of me, then keep me safe, she said. Not by sending me away, by being smarter, by ending this war, by making them afraid to even think my name. He pulled her into his arms, held her so tightly that her ribs ached. You're insane, he said into her hair. I'm Barbadian, she corrected. We're stubborn by birth. That night they made a plan. Dae-sung would not send her away, but he would triple her security. She would stop teaching in Hongdae temporarily, and he would call a meeting with the Russian faction's leader, a man named Volkov, to negotiate a truce. Volkov doesn't do truces. His lieutenant, a scarred man named Mr. Han, warned. He does blood. Then we give him blood, Dae-sung said. Just not ours. The meeting was set for Friday. Neutral ground. A sauna in Incheon, because even gangsters like to sweat out their grudges. Sarah insisted on coming. Absolutely not, Dae-sung said. I'm the reason for the meeting. They targeted me. I should be there. You should be in a bunker. I should be with you. He lost that argument too. Friday. The sauna. It was surreal. Sarah sat in a heated room wearing a white cotton robe, her microbraids pinned up, her gray-green eyes scanning the steam. Across from her, Volkov, a bear of a man with a shaved head and a neck tattoo of a double-headed eagle, sipped barley tea. Dae-sung sat beside her. His hand rested on her knee under the table. A warning to Volkov. Touch her and you die. Your woman is beautiful, Volkov said in accented English. Unusual eyes. They see right through bullshit, Sarah said pleasantly. Try me. Volkov laughed. It was not a friendly sound. I like her. Shame she's with a man who can't protect her. Dae-sung's fingers tightened on her knee. She's not the topic. The territory is. They talked for 2 hours. Borders, percentages, tribute. Volkov wanted Dae-sung's gambling dens in Gangnam. Dae-sung offered him a smaller slice in Yongsan. Neither budged. Then Volkov made a mistake. He looked at Sarah. Not a glance, a stare. The kind of stare that said, I've already imagined what you look like afraid. If we don't agree, Volkov said slowly, maybe I take something of yours. Something pretty. Something that would make you listen. Dae-sung moved faster than Sarah could track. 1 second, he was seated. The next, he had Volkov by the throat, pinned against the wet tiles of the sauna wall. A small knife. Where had that come from? Pressed against the Russian's jugular. You will never, Dae-sung said, his voice soft as silk over steel. Look at her again. You will never speak her name. You will never breathe in her direction. If you do, I will not kill you. I will find everyone you have ever loved. and I will make them watch as I take you apart piece by piece. Do you understand? Volkov's face was purple. He nodded. Dae-sung released him. The Russian crumpled to the floor, gasping. Dae-sung turned to Sarah, held out his hand. She took it without hesitation. They walked out together, leaving Volkov wheezing on the tiles. In the parking garage, Dae-sung stopped. His hand shook in hers. That was for you, he said. I have never lost control like that in a negotiation. I know. He could have had a weapon. His men could have been waiting. I know. Why aren't you scared? Sarah pulled his hand to her lips, kissed his scarred knuckles. Because you didn't kill him, she said. You showed mercy. And that means you're not the monster you think you are. Dae-sung closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had shifted. The walls he'd built around his heart, the ones she'd been chipping at for months, finally crumbled. I love you, he said. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be soft or safe or good. But I love you. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it. Sarah's eyes filled. She cupped his face, traced the sharp line of his jaw. Then start now, she whispered. Take me home. He did. 6 months later, Sarah danced for him again. But this time, she chose the song. The penthouse had changed. The silence was gone, replaced by music, laughter, the clatter of pots in the kitchen. Sarah had taken over cooking, and Dae-sung had learned to make ginger tea exactly the way she liked it. The security team had been reduced to 2 people, Choi and Bear, because the war with Volkov had ended. Dae-sung had ceded the Yongsan territory after all, a peace offering. Volkov had accepted, too shaken by the sauna incident to push further. Sarah was no longer a prisoner. She had a passport, a bank account in her own name, and a standing invitation to leave whenever she wanted. She hadn't left. Tonight was New Year's Eve. The apartment was lit with candles, hundreds of them, flickering on every surface. Dae-sung had arranged them himself, his burn-scarred hand careful with the matches. He wore a deep navy silk shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, the edge of his tiger tattoo visible. His hair was slightly longer now, falling over his forehead. Sarah wore a dress the color of midnight, velvet backless with a slit up the thigh. Her microbraids were arranged in an intricate crown. Her gray-green eyes glittered in the candlelight. You're staring, she said. I'm memorizing, he replied. A slow song began to play from the speakers, not Bajan drums this time. A cello piece mournful and sweet, something her grandmother used to hum. Sarah held out her hand. Dance with me. Dae-sung hesitated. I don't dance. Everyone dances. You just haven't found the right partner. He took her hand. She pulled him into the center of the room, placed his hands on her waist, looped her arms around his neck. They moved slowly, awkwardly at first. He was too stiff, she was too fluid. Then something clicked. His body relaxed. He let her lead. I've been thinking, she said as they swayed. Dangerous. About Barbados. My grandmother's house. The one with the turquoise shutters. His arms tightened. You want to go back. I want to show it to you. If you want to come. He stopped moving. His dark eyes searched her face. You want me to meet your family. My grandmother is dead, but her garden is still there. The breadfruit tree. The bench where she used to shell peas. I want to sit on that bench with you. I want to teach you how to fish for flying fish. I want to see you in the sun, not just in this gray city. Dae-sung's throat worked. Serafina, I'm a criminal. I've hurt people. I'll probably hurt more. Your grandmother's garden deserves better than my shadow. My grandmother, Sarah said softly, married a man who ran rum for the drug lords in the 80s. He had a scar from his ear to his collarbone and a heart made of gold. She used to say, everybody's hands get dirty, baby. The question is what you wash them with. She pressed her palm to his chest, over his heart, which was pounding. You wash with loyalty, with sacrifice, with the way you looked at me for 3 years and never touched, because you wanted me to come to you on my own terms. That's not a monster. That's a man who's been waiting his whole life for someone to see him. Dae-sung's composure cracked. He pulled her close. Not roughly, but desperately, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. His face pressed into her hair. His shoulders shook. She held him, let him fall apart. Didn't say shoo or it's okay because it wasn't okay, he had done terrible things, and he would carry those scars forever. But she held him anyway. I'll go with you, he said finally, his voice muffled. To Barbados, to the bench, to the flying fish. I'll go anywhere you are. She pulled back, smiled. A smile that lit her rare gray-green eyes, that made her look like the girl who danced in the rain, free and untouchable. Then it's a date, she said. 3 months later in Barbados. The bench was old, painted white, chipping in places, shaded by a breadfruit tree heavy with fruit. The sea was visible through the palms, a shocking blue that hurt to look at. The air smelled of salt and damp earth and something floral Sarah couldn't name. Dae-sung sat on the bench, his long legs stretched out, his face tilted toward the sun. He wore linen pants and a loose cotton shirt, no suit, no tie, no knife in his pocket. His burn scar was visible in the golden light, pale and twisted. He looked peaceful. Sarah had never seen him look peaceful. She walked toward him with 2 glasses of cold sorrel drink, not African. Sorrel is hibiscus, beloved across the Caribbean. She handed him one. He took it without opening his eyes. I could stay here forever, he said. That's the point. She sat beside him, leaned her head on his shoulder. The breadfruit tree rustled. A rooster crowed in the distance. Somewhere a child laughed. Do you miss it? She asked quietly. Soul, the power, the fear. He was silent for a long moment. Then he set down his glass, turned to her, and cupped her face with both hands. I miss nothing, he said. When I have everything. He kissed her, softly, slowly, the way he'd learned to kiss her over the past months. Not desperate anymore. Not hungry. Tender. The kiss of a man who had finally stopped running. When they broke apart, Sarah was smiling. Good, she said, because I'm not sharing that bench with anyone else. Dae-sung laughed. A real laugh, full and warm, nothing hollow about it. He pulled her into his lap, wrapped his arms around her, and pressed his lips to her forehead. Serafina Nkosi, he said against her skin. You have ruined me for any other life. Good, she said again. That was the plan. The sun climbed higher. The sea glittered. And on a white bench under a breadfruit tree, a reformed monster and the woman who danced her way into his silence finally stopped being unquiet. They simply were.
Hi loves, this story teaches us that sometimes it takes one moment for someone to finally see your worth. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like and subscribe.